Now, before we resume, can I just say, for the benefit of those watching this on the live stream, that we've had a certain amount of difficulty this morning with the running transcript. I've had a chance to speak to the technical people, and they're confident that they've identified the problem, and that we are able to resume now with everything working. And indeed, it does appear to be working. I apologise for the difficulties that that's caused, but I'm reasonably confident that we can now resume in the normal way. So I'm going to ask the usher to bring Mr. Sounes back, please. Mr. Sounes, I think for the second time today you've been kept waiting longer than you might have expected. I'm sorry about that. We've been having some technical difficulties, but we are ready to carry on. Can I just ask you this, though? It may be that we might want to run a bit longer than usual this afternoon. We'll see how we go. Would that trouble you in principle?
No, that's fine.
All right. Well, we'll see how we get on anyway, shall we?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, Miss Grange.
Thank you very much. Yes. If I can start with some follow-up questions from topics we were discussing this morning. And on cavity barriers, can I go to a section of Mr. Hyatt's report again, PHYR 604 at page 67, and look at figure 4.44. And I want to look at the plan that's at the bottom of that page. And what this is an extract from the drawing that we were looking at, 127906110, proposed typical bay. That was a drawing that formed part of the employer's requirements. Now, I don't think we looked at this plan section this morning, but the short question that I've got for you is, when you looked at this drawing at the time, what did you think the little hatched area was right at the junction between the window frame and the column?
I can't confirm what I thought it was at the time. If that's your question.
Yeah. All we see on the labels is there's a label coming down from it, the middle label that says window EDPM lapped over existing structure. So that's like the EDPM membrane.
That's providing the weather seal behind,
Yeah.
direct onto the concrete.
But you can't help us as to what that hatched area is there.
I think it's a recognition that it would need to be insulated, and that it... no, I can't. I think it's indicative.
Okay, thank you. On resident consultation, I took you to a document that I now want to just go back to. This is TMO 100377758. And what I want to do is start at the bottom of page 1. This is an email from Mr. Peter Martindale. Now, we've been helpfully told that he was a resident of the tower at the time. And he's sending you an email on the 20th of August 2012. Do you see that?
Yep.
And he's raising a number of points. And if we go on to page 2, it's item 4 that I just want to ask you about. He says here, as expressed at our last meeting, I am concerned that the implications of choices are not being fully explained to residents who, for example, when asked to choose a design for the windows, have not had explained that it is not just the window, but the entire vicinity of the window will be substantively affected. What they think they are opting for and what they will discover they are getting when work starts could lead to some very disgruntled people. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Can you recall receiving this email from Mr. Martindale?
Now that I know he lived in the tower, I can possibly place him, but I'm not sure. I don't, I'll be honest, I don't recall this email.
What was your reaction to the criticism that appears to be made here, that the implications of choices are not being fully explained to residents?
Sorry, repeat that. What is my?
What was your reaction to the criticism that appears to be made here, that the implications of choices, i.e. choices for the design, are not being fully explained to residents?
I did not. I would have passed this on to the TMO,
I see.
I suspect at the time, I would not engage in a one-to-one with a resident.
Does that mean you didn't kind of think substantively about the complaint that seems to be being raised there?
I would have, if it was I don't think it wasn't discussed with residents what the implications of the proposed changes were.
Right.
It would have required a conversation. I think he's suggesting that we're not explaining it adequately.
Yeah.
That's how I read that. In other words, it's not been communicated.
But is it right from what you just said that you didn't think that was a valid criticism?
Well, I think it's all prefaced by residents might not be understanding the full implications.
Yeah. We can see at the top of page 1 that Mr. Dunkerton appears to respond to this, CCing you in, saying thank you for your comments and thank you for taking the time to attend our presentation. Do you recall whether you ever responded?
No, I wouldn't respond direct.
Okay. Then on design responsibility, just picking up a different topic, you said very candidly this morning that you did not look at ADB in carrying out the design of the cladding on Grenfell Tower because you said it was only guidance and you found it difficult to interpret. Is that correct?
Difficult to reach definitive interpretation.
Yeah. So can I ask you, how did you, as lead consultant and with coordination responsibilities, propose to ensure that the cladding design that you proposed was sufficient to satisfy the building regulations if you weren't complying with the guidance in approved document B?
I think I'd take issue with that phrase, comply with guidance. You can comply with a clear set of requirements, but complying with the approved document requires an insight which I believe we had A, employed Exover to input on, and B, the contractor had employed a specialist facade subcontractor to input on, and ultimately building control would agree the whole.
But I'm asking with you how you sought to comply with the building regulations themselves, the functional requirements. If you weren't following the practical guidance in ADB, what were you following?
I believe it's those steps that we took.
So those
engaging those entities to support us, we sought to comply.
I see. So because you...
I've since come across alternative forms of regulation. So I feel that referring to the guidance as somehow definitive is inaccurate. It requires a high level of interpretation.
Well, we're not saying that guidance is somehow definitive, but I think the point I'm putting to you is that if you're not going to follow that practical guidance, shouldn't you have been following something else that gave you a route to compliance with the functional requirements, including the functional requirements under Part B of the building regulations?
No, I don't understand, because Exover's fire strategy report refers specifically to Part B. Building control specifically refer to Part B.
So
So the judgment as to whether something meets the requirements is a judgment. It's not something that the approved document can give you categorically.
I see. Okay. Now, if, as you suggested this morning, you did not think diagram 33 of approved document B was applicable to the cladding, as opposed to being applicable to conventional construction, to what guidance did you, as project leader for Studio E, direct the members of your team to in order to comply with the building regulations?
The approach we took was to confer with others, both in the industry and consultants, and this largely postdates the period of my intense involvement in the project. And I don't believe we ever sought to comply against some other code of practice
Okay.
or approved system of approval.
Okay, thank you. Windows. I've got some brief questions for you on windows. Now, in terms of the design of the windows, I think we can agree that the new windows at Grenfell Tower lay outside and forward of the plane of the original masonry fabric and structure. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
And as such, the windows were no longer sealed against the solid concrete surround. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, it's correct, isn't it, that changes in the size and placing of the new windows created gaps as a result of moving the windows outwards of that plane of the concrete structure?
Yes.
Can we look at a drawing that helps with this? If we can bring up INQ 30011312 at page 7. Now, this is one of the Harley drawings that was approved for construction, and we see the Studio East stamp as well there. And I brought this up because it's helpfully got some green at the gap between the column and the window frame. Do you see that green gap?
Yes.
And there's actually some text with a little note, and it says, note, this varies 35 to 90 as columns not plumb. However, all windows align vertically. Do you see that there?
Yes.
So is it right, and were you aware at the time, that that gap between the window frame and the column might vary between 35 and 90 millimetres?
I wasn't aware of the scale of the tolerance, but I would, on every project there's tolerance.
What I want to know is, did that gap concern you at all during your time on the project? Was that something that you gave any attention to?
We knew that there would need to be a gap to accommodate the tolerance. That was something we were aware of.
It's really the size of the gap. Did that ever concern you, the size of it and the potential variation in it?
In itself, no, that didn't concern me.
Do you remember ever discussing it specifically on the project with anybody?
No.
And does it follow that you didn't ever think about the potential fire risks that might be posed by that gap?
I think you can only ask that question with hindsight. If you were to see that gap in isolation, you would want to know where the risk was. And there isn't, I mean, it should be obviously packed with insulation, but you would not expect there to be a fire hazard sitting within the cladding zone.
Okay.
In other words, if I heard your question, if someone had asked me that before, I'd be thinking rather of where's the hazard? I can't see where the hazard is.
Now, did you know that the EDPM membrane was to sit in that gap as part of the final design of the window?
It largely closes the gap for the sake of weatherproofing.
So is the answer yes, that you were aware that an EDPM membrane was going to be across that gap? I think it's indicated here in the dotted line.
I think that is quite a typical detail.
Okay.
I knew it would be a membrane.
Did you know at the time of the Grenfell project that EDPM rubber membrane is a combustible material and will burn quite rapidly if ignited?
No, but I knew it was based on rubber.
Okay.
So
the fact it was based on rubber...
it is combustible, yes.
Yeah. But that's not something you gave any specific attention to on the project yourself?
Again, I was not aware of there being any hazard in this zone to be concerned of combustibility of components of that nature, which is quite an isolated item.
Okay. I now want to just ask you a few short questions about the insulation products that were used at the interface between the window frames at the head, jamb and sill of the windows. Can we look at something in Mr. Hyatt's report to start with? This is PHYR 602 at 39, and it's figure 2.13. Now, this is a diagram adapted by Mr. Hyatt of Harley drawing, HAR 408880. And we can see the area he's outlined in the drawing in red. That's the line of the original concrete column. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And at the top of the diagram, to the right of the red, we can see running parallel with the red line, it says window board and soft joint by others. Do you see that?
Yes.
It's writing sitting on its side. And this indicates the new internal window reveals that would be installed as part of the internal window reveal. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, above this, we can see the markup. It says existing frame remaining in most cases, removed by others where necessary. Do you see that?
Yes.
So that's the old existing wooden door frame.
No, that was aluminium. It was an aluminium frame.
Okay.
It's the outer frame, so the sliding,
Okay.
sliding windows.
And then below the outline of the original metal window frame, we can see insulation indicated, and the markup says insulation by others. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Now, if we look at the employer's requirements and the NBS specification, if we can go SEA 50169 at page 249. Sorry, it's actually, I think it's at page 243. There's their reference to compressible insulation and gaps. Do you see that at item 235 at the bottom?
Yes.
Do you see that there? And it says manufacturer Rockwool Limited. Do you see that?
Yes.
And we've discussed what Rockwool is. Now, I want to look at one of the employer's requirements drawings. If we go again, I think it's the same drawing we looked at this morning, SEA 402499, and it's the offline version. And I want to go to the very bottom left sketch, the plan at the bottom left. Yeah, that's great. And then we can see various tags there where the window frames meet the existing reinforced concrete wall. And it says existing reveal cladding to be retained and new cladding fixed through it. Add new lipping to cover new and existing cladding edge. Do you see that there? It's the third
Yes.
tag down in that
Yes.
drawing.
Yes.
And then in the middle, at the existing internal partitions, it states cut back existing plasterboard partition to allow window installation, install new timber reveal cladding.
Yes.
Can you see that? Yes, that's in the middle. That's in the middle
Yes.
label, cut back existing plasterboard, so away from the column. And at the bottom, there's reference in the second tag up to window EDPM lapped over existing structure. Now, would you agree that there's no indication in this plan here of any packing material to the internal window lining?
I don't think the scale of drawing really permits that.
No. And what I want to put to you is it right that while Studio E specified compressible rock wool insulation in the NBS, neither mineral wool nor rock wool is specified on the tender drawings?
correct, but tender spec takes precedence over the drawings.
I see. So I wanted to ask you whether you agreed that Studio E ought to have identified on the drawings the type of insulation product that should be used in this application. Do I take it you don't agree with that?
No, the reason for the codes is to point to the specification.
I see. I don't think we see any labels here that are referring back to that bit of the specification.
No.
No. On the window infill panels, just some short questions about those. If we look again at the NBS specification, this is SEA 50169. And if we go to page 145 within that, this is item 332, it's within the section L10, and it's under the heading Aluminium Windows Fixed Unit there. And what it's talking about is under the panel facing type, so that's the second little bullet down. It says aluminium faced insulated panel comprising core insulation, aluminium lining panel and integrated channel profile around perimeter. Do you see that there? Can you see that? It's the second little dot down. There's a dot that says finish as delivered, polyester powder coating, and then there's a dot that said panel facing type. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it says aluminium faced insulated panel comprising core insulation.
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes.
And that's what we understand to be we call them the window infill panels.
Yes.
Yes. And I think we can see there an insulated core has been specified, but no specific product is identified for that
Yes.
item. Now, what I want to put to you is that at this tender stage, Studio E should have at least specified that insulation product should be of limited combustibility in accordance with the guidance in paragraph 12.7 of approved document B. Would you accept that?
No, because that would be subject to the method of demonstrating compliance.
So does it follow that you left that to the contractor and any relevant subcontractor to determine exactly what type of panel they
Yes.
provided there?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I'm going to come on to ask you some questions about building control in a minute, which is perhaps the main topic for this afternoon. But I just want to pick up just a few other points that I think are logical to pick up at this point. Some of them relating to Exover and Mr. Ashton's evidence. So first of all, I want to pick up a point arising from Mr. Ashton's oral evidence. He said that at the first meeting with the design team, which he attended, he said he made the point fairly forcefully that the proposals that had been drawn up by Studio E were not acceptable in terms of getting building control approval, and therefore, he said, we needed to do some serious work to get to a situation where we could go forward with Kensington and Chelsea, confident that a scheme would be approved. That was on day 17, page 9, lines 4 to 12. Now, he couldn't give an exact date of that meeting, but he says he thought that was the first time he attended with all of the team there and the client there. And we know the first meeting he attended was a design team meeting on the 6th of September 2012. Now, what I want to ask you is whether you recall Mr. Ashton saying something to that effect, either at that meeting or maybe at a later meeting, that he made the point forcefully that the proposals at that stage were going to need some serious work in order to go forward with confident with building control.
I obviously prepared the notes to that meeting.
Yeah.
Which you have. When I take a note, of course, I am focused on the action. It was probably over any kind of record of the meeting. I'm more focused on what needs to be followed up. I can't say I didn't hear him say that. I remember him talking, but I can't remember. I can only obviously point to my notes.
Okay.
And the meeting that we had subsequent, that we had a meeting, I think it was on the Monday. But I can't deny that he said something to that effect. So I can't, it's too long ago to be sure what I remember him saying.
Okay. But you don't have a memory of him being very forceful in that first meeting about effectively the uphill struggle he thought you were going to have?
I don't think he quite said that. No, he didn't say we were going to, I don't think in his evidence.
He said we needed to do some serious work to get to a situation where we could go forward confident that a scheme would be approved. Those were the words he used.
Yes, as I say, I can't contradict that because I can't remember what he did say.
So he might well have said that.
He might as well have said something to that effect. And whose work is it? Is it his work or our work?
Yeah. I mean, did that chime with the general awareness you had at that time that you were going to have to do some serious work to be confident in any building control application?
I think it's consistent throughout that we understood the issue with a single stair building without, with a very limited smoke exhaust to the smoke lobbies, that it was sensitive and would need attention. That I think is consistent throughout.
Okay. Just staying with Mr. Ashton for a moment and thinking back to exactly this time period, we know from emails, and I previously discussed this with you, that there was a meeting that you and Mr. Ashton had on the 10th of September 2012 after that. And you previously said in your evidence that you remembered elevations being on the table showing cladding. And you said this, that you were almost sure we discussed it. That was day 8, page 40,
Yes.
48. From line 23 onwards. Now, Mr. Ashton said to us last week that he didn't recall seeing any elevations of the building at that meeting, and that they certainly weren't discussed in any way, shape or form. He also said there'd been no discussion about cladding at that meeting. That was day 16 on page 154. Now, I want to come back to this because you said before you were almost sure, and I want to ask you, how sure are you? First of all, how sure are you that there were elevations on the table when you had the meeting with him?
My memory's as it was, and I can give you another reference.
Okay.
If that helps.
Yeah. Okay. Have you got it with you?
I do. And of course, I've had to think about this, but it's RYD.
Yeah.
000.
Yeah.
262.
Yeah.
30.
Okay. Yeah. Let's bring that up.
The reason why I'd say elevations on the table is it was our large meeting room, and I believe at the end of the meeting I asked one of the assistants to bring out the A1 consultation boards that we had prepared
Right.
that summer,
Yeah.
just to show Terry what we were doing.
Yeah.
So I don't. I do agree with him. We didn't discuss it in any detail, but I believe I showed him, say, this
Yeah.
board, because I believe it was sitting in a folder in our office.
Am I right? This looks quite similar to some of what we see in the Stage C report that
Yes.
you then put in at the end of October 2012. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
So you had these.
So I have this recollection, and
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm disputing what Terry says, but I believe I showed him what we were doing.
Yeah. And can you recall any form of discussion about these elevations at that
No.
time? No.
We were showing him what we were doing.
And can you recall any substantive discussion about the cladding specifically at that meeting?
I can't remember anything substantive. No.
Okay. Now, we know that Mr. Jess sent a link to Mr. Ashton and the design team, the Stage C report. I looked at that with you previously, and I looked at that with Mr. Ashton. That was on the 31st of October 2012, the same
Yes.
day that you then got issue 1 of the fire strategy. And it was just CC'd in to Mr. Ashton. He wasn't one of the main recipients, but he was a CC. Can I just ask, what were your expectations of Exover, or if you had any, when that link was sent to them?
I think at that point it was a record. Stage C is a record.
Did you expect Mr. Ashton to open the link and have a look at the Stage C report in order to inform himself about where you were on the design of the project?
Not per se. It was obviously circulated as a record, so I'd expect certainly the other designers to have downloaded it as a record.
But not him. You wouldn't have expected that.
I don't recall having any thoughts about what he might do. I just circulated it.
But by the time it came to his issue 2 of the outline fire safety strategy the following October, would you have expected him to have absorbed the contents of that report by then?
I think we circulated drawings direct at that point.
Right.
So, and I don't think we circulated the full Stage C report with the elevations and the engineers sections.
Do you agree it would have been prudent for Studio E to have asked Exover if they'd seen the Stage C document at some point?
I wouldn't. I think prudence. Implying there's some risk of something getting missed, which I wouldn't have expected there to be.
Is that because, to cut to the chase, are you saying that you were sending drawings separately and it was those drawings you were expecting him to look at? And that you had no expectation of him looking at the Stage C report?
I can't say that I expected him to look at the Stage C report, no. As to whether it's prudent for him to have looked at the Stage C report, well, that's
Really prudent for you to have checked that he looked at it?
That's a difficult question in hindsight.
So how
Chasing people to look at documents would be endless,
Right, yeah.
wouldn't it?
So how did you think he was learning about the external wall at the time, if he wasn't reading, for example, the Stage C report?
If it was pertinent, I'd expect him to raise it.
I see. So you were expecting a request from him
I would
for further details?
Any consultant, if they needed to know something, would ask.
Right. And then just finishing this short topic on Exover, and then I'll ask you more about building control. Did you believe that Exover remained engaged throughout the project?
Sorry, can you just define?
Did you believe that
throughout?
Exover remained engaged? We know they were engaged by the TMO initially. The fee proposal was accepted.
Yes.
Did you believe at the time that they remained engaged throughout the project beyond Ryden's appointment?
No, well, when I said not engaged, I thought that was a subject between Exover and TMO.
Did you think
So
there was a point when Exover stopped working on the project pursuant to that appointment?
I believe with the issue of their third revision of the outline strategy that they had concluded their input on the report, on that phase of the work. And that the fee that they had tendered, I believe, covered that.
Right.
Didn't have a clear idea at the time of the scale of the fee, but I knew it wasn't a big fee.
Were you aware at the time that they were providing ad hoc advice, for example, on the cladding in September 2014, in March 2015? Were you aware of that?
I believe I was, and I think I was copied into some of the
Yeah,
correspondence.
you were.
Yeah.
And on what basis did you think they were providing that advice?
In terms of an appointment, or in terms of...
Did you ever consider on what basis they were giving that advice, that ad hoc advice?
I'm sorry, on what basis? Implying on what terms?
Yes. Who was their client for the purposes of delivering that advice? What were the terms of their engagement? Did you ever think about that?
I think it was... Did I think about it? I think I understood that they were tying up the loose ends, or there are some outstanding queries on the original fire strategy.
Right.
Or obviously, because it was discussing detail, it was very ad hoc, and it was checking to see if they could advise,
Okay.
rather than being done on any formal basis.
Okay. Thank you. So building control, I now just want to ask you about some interactions with building control. We know that the first meeting with building control took place on the 7th of November 2012. Can we go and look at the notes of that? This is SEA 406526. Now, we looked at this before in the context of insulation. These are Mr. Jess's notes of that meeting. And when you look at the email and all the subtopics, it would appear that the focus was on means of escape issues. And there's no reference in the notes of this meeting to any discussion about the overcladding, is there?
No, I believe not.
Now, the next meeting with building control was on the 17th of September 2013. So, and can we go, with reference to that, to SEA 50121? This is an email that you send, if we can just blow that up a bit. You send to John Allen and Paul Hanson of RBKC Building Control, dated the 25th of October 2013, in which you're reporting back following a meeting with them. Now, your statement says that the meeting had been on the 17th of September 2013. That's paragraph 292. But actually, the first line of the email here says, further to our meeting at RBKC on the 17th of August. Can you help us as to which month it was? Whether it was August or
I think that my statement says it was September.
Now, either way, I mean, in terms of the chronology, the Stage D report was issued, I think, by Studio E in August 2012. I think that was right. And
Sorry, Stage D was it?
Yeah,
13.
the Stage D report.
13, I think.
Yeah.
July or August 13.
13, exactly.
Yeah.
This is in 13 as well. So you've done the Stage D report, and you're working towards the NBS specification and tender documents by October 2013. Is that right?
We're working towards submitting by November
Yeah.
13, yes.
Now, can you explain why nearly a year had passed between the meetings with building control?
Why I think there was a delay?
Yeah, why so long between the two meetings? You've had the first one in November 2012, but then there's been no meeting until it's either September or August 2013.
I think my witness statement, a large bulk of it covers the series of events which resulted in such a delay to the project. A combination of switch of procurement and sort of planning impasse on the appearance of the tower, as well as a change in management at the TMO,
Right, yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
all contributed to the delay.
Now, you say in your statement that you don't recall what was discussed at this meeting. Just for the transcript, that's at paragraph 318 of your statement on page 129. In light of the focus that there'd been on B1 and B5 fire safety issues up to that point, would you agree that it's unlikely you discussed overcladding or the B4 requirement at this meeting?
I think it is unlikely,
Yeah.
given the conversations that followed this between building control and Exova.
Yeah. Your email at the end, just in fairness to you, does say, we see some of what was discussed, and then it says, right in the last paragraph, there are a number of other issues in dealing with this refurbishment that need to be discussed, and this is probably best done in person once you've had a chance to study the documents. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Now, did any of those issues concern the overcladding?
I can't recall what I was thinking of at that point.
Now, we can see...
But I know that at
Sorry.
this meeting, the focus on smoke was the primary issue. I seem to recall, at the expense of anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. In the attachments to this email, we can see that there are some drawings attached and an outline fire safety strategy is attached. Do you see that there?
Yes.
But the drawings, we've checked those drawings, they don't include any drawings of the proposed cladding. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, a few days later, on the 29th of October 2013, you emailed Claire Williams. Can we go to that? This is at SEA 409510. And I want to go to the second email at the bottom of the first page. This is an email that you've sent, Bruce Sounes, to Duncan Campbell of Max Fordham, Matt Smith of Max Fordham, and then Claire Williams of the TMO. And you're addressing them. And then can we go to the top of the next page, top of the second page? We can see what you said to Claire in that email. And you say this, you say, Claire, I followed up the fire strategy submission we made to Building Control on Friday. I managed to get through to Paul Hanson yesterday. John Allen was on leave. He initially didn't want to offer any time frame for a response, saying he was very busy and there were other very urgent jobs needing his attention. I pressed him, reminded him of the issues and why we needed London Fire Brigade input, and that they had offered to pass it on for a quick reply. At that, he said he would get onto it next week. Do you see that there?
Yes.
So you're reporting back to her. And then can we look 2 lines down from that? You say this. You say, I wondered if you had an leverage. I think you might mean any leverage. Yeah? Any leverage
Yes, I think.
to ensure we get the critical feedback we need to inform the tender. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Can you explain what you meant by that, asking her if she had any leverage?
As an RBKC employee, whether she could speak to him direct. As a third-party consultant, he may not feel as inclined to be responsive, if I'm being honest.
And what were you expecting her to do when she spoke to RBKC Building Control?
Nothing more than what I'd communicated already. He's indicated that he would come back. I just thought it's urgent, I might ask.
Yeah. Is it fair to say at this time you felt under pressure to finalise the tender documentation?
All projects have deadlines, and we had been given a deadline.
Were you hoping for a quick sign-off from Building Control at this stage?
No, this issue specifically centred on the smoke exhaust to the lobbies.
Right. I want to put to you, were you reluctant to raise the cladding at this stage because you didn't want to create any further delays on the project?
No.
Is that why cladding wasn't raised?
No. I think I've explained before, the cladding was not seen as a critical element to the viability of the scheme at this point.
So you didn't think you needed to have any discussions with building control about the cladding?
No. That was...
Okay. Now can we go to SEA 409805? This is an email from John Allen of RBKC Building Control to you, dated the 11th of November 2013. And in this email, we can see from the first few lines that John Allen is saying that the information submitted so far is not adequate to enable an effective consultation with the fire authority. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And it's clear from the remaining email that his concerns appear to be related to the smoke control system. Is that correct?
That was how I understood it at the time.
Yeah. And there's no reference to cladding here again, is there?
No.
Now, you say in your statement that you were frustrated that things weren't resolved before going to tender. For the transcript, that's paragraph 323 of your statement on page 131. Can we just go to an email you sent at the time? This is SEA 409809. And if we can blow up the top, this is you to Claire Williams on the 11th of November 2013. And in that first paragraph, you say, Claire, apologies if that was the impression. And importantly, you say this: I'm frustrated that the fire strategy principle has not been agreed prior to tender, and I would expect the TMO to be as well. I thought you needed to know, given the magnitude of design risk associated with fire. And then you say these are strictly M&E items, and I don't see us achieving resolution before the end of the week. Do you see that?
I think you need to show the preceding email to see the context.
Sorry.
And I don't think it's on this.
If we go down the page.
Yeah.
She's saying to you, you sound like fed up of Hammersmith. And I think what you're doing there, and you can see it from the blue text, is she's extracted a bit of Paul Hanson's email on the smoke control system, and you were all discussing that. Does that
There's
seem
a
right?
previous email to this, which she responds to.
Okay,
That's the context.
fine. Can we go back up to the top of the page in your email? When you say, I thought you needed to know, given the magnitude of design risk associated with fire, can you just explain what you meant by that in this email?
The context was discussing the meetings that we'd had to discuss to try and agree the smoke strategy.
Yeah.
That was the original email. And Claire had picked up from my tone, which I hadn't intended to betray, that I was frustrated.
Yeah. Was there any sense in which you were pushing for building control to endorse the proposals at an early stage because you yourself didn't feel confident in your own ability to spot problems? Is that any part of your thinking?
I'm sorry, you're completely taking it out of context. The original email discussed the meetings we'd had between building control and Max Fordham to discuss the smoke exhaust strategy. Bearing in mind that had been flagged by Exova from the very beginning as a significant concern. And from my position as a lead designer, I saw it as having a potentially huge knock-on to the feasibility of what we were doing.
Okay. Do you accept that potentially due to your inexperience on projects like this, it just didn't occur to you that there might be compliance issues with the cladding proposals?
Again, I can't see the context.
Pardon?
I can't see the context for that question.
Well, we've looked at several emails and there's been no discussion with building control about the cladding. And what I'm putting to you is do you think that perhaps due to your inexperience, it simply wasn't occurring to you that there might be compliance issues with the cladding proposals?
I don't think we had planning approval yet for the scheme as a whole. So we weren't yet. I mean, yes, we were trying to finalise our scheme, but I don't think we had. Am I confusing myself? No, at this point, we were concentrating on the critical items.
And you didn't see cladding as a critical item for the point of view of building control approval?
No, it is. Of course it is. But to see it as a strategic issue at this point, I don't agree it's true. Okay.
Now, Claire Williams responds to you the same day. Can we look at that? This is SEA 409814. And she says this: don't worry, I was only teasing. I'm not sure if the building regulations chap is being lazy or maybe has had a run-in with firebods and so wants to make sure they won't bat it back. You are right, it's a major part of the scheme and we are being held back by this procedural glitch. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Was it your view, did you share her view that building control was being lazy? I mean, to be fair, she says, I'm not sure if he is, but she raises that as a possibility. Did you think that?
No.
Now, if we keep following the chronology of what was going on with building control, you then provided some further information relating to the fire strategy plans to building control on the 3rd of December 2013. That's at paragraph 324 of your witness statement. And then you received feedback from Paul Hanson on the 31st of December 2013. Can we look at your statement with this? This paragraph 339 of your statement, SEA 3014273 at page 139. There's a heading there, building control, fire safety and smoke ventilation between December and March 14, and you say building control provided feedback on BCP1 on the 31st of December 2013, and then you say what that included, and it included B1 means of escape observations, and then a copy of a fire strategy drawing with comments in blue, and copy of the fire access plans. Do you see that?
Yes.
The BCP1, the P1 submission to building control, can you just explain what P1 means?
That was the name given by Paul Hanson to his markup.
Yeah, okay, so that's like a code he's
yes.
used for that particular submission to him.
Yes.
And we can see from your paragraph below that you've summarised the feedback that you were getting, and in summary, building control was still saying it didn't have enough information to consult the LFB, and this is in relation to the smoke control system. Is that correct?
Yes, that was my understanding.
Yeah. Now, paragraph 341, just a little bit further on, you say, sorry, let's just bring that up. You say there, I was surprised by the level of detail and effort that building control had gone to, which in my experience was unusual. We'd not yet made the formal application. And you say, building control's engagement gave me comfort that, from a fire perspective and on the level of detail provided, there was nothing that might pose a risk to the project prior to the tender being awarded. Do you see that there?
Yes.
But we've been through the documents and we've agreed that the detail you'd provided by that stage did not cover the cladding, did it?
No.
So is it right that from a fire perspective, you couldn't take any comfort from building control scrutiny on that aspect of the proposals, could you?
Why not? I didn't see them as separate departments on different sections.
But how would building control even know that overcladding was part of your proposals at this point?
I can't evidence it, but I cannot I would expect that at every engagement, the introduction would describe the nature of the project, which would include a description of the new windows and the overcladding.
But you hadn't provided any specific detail, had you, to building
No.
control by this point?
No, but
So there were no...
You're asking me whether they ought to have known, or whether how they would have known, and I believe I would have told them at the first meeting.
That overcladding was part of the proposal?
Cladding was part of the overall scheme.
Would you accept that your main concern at this point seemed to be maintaining momentum on the project?
This was New Year's Eve. Tenders had been issued. What's the context for your question, sorry?
Well, I'm asking you whether you thought your main concern by this point was to maintain momentum on the project.
The project was out to tender. We were awaiting tender returns.
Okay. Now, we know that these comments from Paul Hanson that he gave on the 31st of December 2013, they were passed from Mr. Crawford to Ryden much later in September 2014. Do you know, had those comments been passed to Ryden any earlier than that?
I can't, offhand, I can't remember, no.
So let's move forward in time to February 2014. Would you agree that during this period and up to the submission of the full plans application, your dealings with building control focused almost exclusively on the smoke ventilation system and means of escape?
I think I can only point to that P1 summary from Paul Hanson. Those are the issues. I think I covered a bit more than that.
Can we look at a document? Let's go to EXO 50621. If you can blow up the top of that page. This is an email from you to Claire Williams on the 14th of February 2014. And you say there, please see attached our fire strategy drawings, both the originals and the documents received from building control. And then you say this, I would hesitate sending these as is. They have taken a very conservative line and we haven't begun further negotiations. I'm copying Terry in, he may have an opinion. So you've copied Terry Ashton in there. Do you see that?
Yes.
Now, on what basis were you saying there that they'd taken a very conservative line? Why did you say that?
I'm afraid I'm going to just rely on my memory here, which isn't... I haven't obviously got it in front of me, what was on the attachment, but I think in my report I discussed the marking of A and B that Paul Hanson had given to various service risers and cupboards off the central lobbies, suggesting he didn't want us to use them. And I thought that may pose a problem for us in routing new services up the building.
Okay. I want to put to you that seems to be quite a dismissive comment about the building control response. Would you accept that?
Dismissive?
Yeah, they've taken
Saying
a very
it's
conservative line.
No. Why would it be dismissive? We have to respect building control.
I see. So you're just stating, as a matter of fact, your belief that they had taken a conservative line. Is that right?
I knew that we had to find routes for the new heating pipes and water supply pipes, and that detail hadn't been fully resolved yet, and that may require some enclosures to be created or existing enclosures to be reused. And in principle, I couldn't see why that couldn't be done,
Okay.
as was done
Okay.
in the event.
Now, keep moving forward with the chronology. On the 29th of June 2014, you submitted an application to RBKC Planning Department for their approval for cassette fixed ACM panels. We don't need to go to that, but after that, you were in discussions with RBKC Planning about the finish and colour of the ACM panels and the method of fixing. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, I want to go to an email towards the end of July, if we can bring up SEA 50175. Yes, so this is an email from you dated the 24th of July 2014 to John Allen of RBKC Building Control, copying in Neil Crawford and Simon Lawrence, informing him that Studio E would be leading on building control. Do you see that in the second paragraph?
Yes.
So you say, we understand that the client's budget is 8.5 million. The application will be made by the design and build contractor Ryden, who are on site. Studio E's appointment has been novated to Ryden, and we will be leading on gaining approval. That was leading on gaining building control approval, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So was it your understanding at the time that it was Studio E's responsibility to liaise with building control?
At that time, yes.
Yeah. Now, in the next paragraph, you say this, or the last sentence of that email, you say the fire strategy was a tricky subject and we would like to engage on this as soon as possible. Can you recall what you meant by that? The fire strategy was a tricky subject.
I can't remember exactly what I thought at the time, but I believe I would have been referring to the outstanding smoke exhaust issue, which still presented a risk.
Right. Now, on the 4th of August 2014, you then submitted the full plans application form to RBKC. If we can go and look at the email which accompanied that, this is at RYD 30144378. So this is you to John Allen, and it's headed Grenfell Tower refurbishment full plans application, and you say, please see attached the completed full plans application form for Grenfell Tower, and then you say hard copy and drawings to follow. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Did you mean hard copy of the form and drawings to follow?
That sounds like what I meant, yes.
And hard copies of the drawings also to follow?
Yes.
Do you know whether hard copies of the drawings were ever submitted to the Building Control Department of RBKC?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure?
I didn't submit them. I
Okay.
can't.
Was that
sure.
because it was Neil Crawford who
Yes.
was dealing with it at that
Yes.
point? Do you know whether Studio E kept a record of exactly what drawings were submitted with associated with the full plans application?
The way we conventionally do it is we would, for a significant issue, create a folder and put all the documents in it so that you had a snapshot of that submission. So we normally would, yes, and I think we did.
Do you agree that it was important to keep a record so that you could check what information the building control body had been supplied with?
Yes.
Now let's just look at the form itself. This is at RYD 30144379. So this is the form that goes in, and I believe it's signed but not dated. Is there another page to this document? No, sorry, if we go back, I've just seen where I meant. Yes, so can you see you've signed it
Second line.
in the middle, and there's your signature, but there's no date on it.
Yes.
Do you know why there was no date?
I understood that it would be enclosed with the check and the drawings. as a hard copy,
Okay.
so I didn't date it.
Now, you've said here in the box below that the date the work will start, this is your handwriting, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. The date the work will start is the week commencing the 18th of August 2014. Do you see that there?
Yes.
But it's right, isn't it, that some work did start on site as early as the 2nd of June 2014? Is that correct?
I can't recall exactly what work was being undertaken, no.
I think some demolition and mobilising work had started earlier than that. So you can't explain for us why the 18th of August was picked as that date?
No, I can remember discussing this with Simon and him asking me to complete it, but I can't remember how the dates were arrived at.
Do you agree on large projects it's common for information and drawings to be supplied to building control as the project progresses?
My understanding is there's usually a upfront submission of drawings to establish the principles, and thereafter the finer detail of different elements is issued over time, yes.
Yes, and what I'm going to put to you is that that's in fact what happened on the Grenfell Tower project, that drawings and information were issued piecemeal after that form had gone in. Is that correct?
Piecemeal suggests incomplete, but I believe that is typically how building control applications are dealt with.
Did you keep a tracker of which drawings and information had been submitted to RBKC?
No. I didn't, no.
Can you
We
help
didn't.
us as to why not?
The person managing the application is usually the one who would the option of a tracker is it's a management device, and even discussing it makes it sound like it's inevitable. It's not, but it is commonly used as a way of tracking the items that building control have agreed.
It's right, isn't it, that there was no tracker kept by Studio E of which drawings have been submitted to building control?
Well, the tracker doesn't track the drawings; it tracks the sections of the approved document which are relevant, and the dates of sign-off. And
Okay.
in other words, so it's you're looking to tick
Yeah,
all the rows that you've agreed all the items.
but Studio E didn't operate one of those, did they?
No.
Did Studio E keep any other form of record that would allow you to check what had been submitted?
We do keep drawing issue sheets, and that would typically apply on this issue as well. We would record an issue on a drawing sheet.
Okay, well, we're going to come back in a little while and just have a look at what was on the drawing issue sheet for building control. But what I want to ask is, if you didn't have a tracker or another formal record, how are you going to ensure that RBKC had all of the relevant information to be able to decide whether the works complied with the building regulations?
I repeat, I don't think the tracker is focused on the documents as much as it is focused on the sections of the approved document. So, for instance, you may require very little to satisfy certain aspects and a lot more on others. Each project will vary. And those drawings and that information would come from various sources.
But without that kind of tool, whether it was as you describe, how was Studio E going to satisfy itself that all the relevant information had been provided to building control?
I think this overlaps with Neil's evidence, and I think he does comment on his engagement with building control and how they wanted to handle the flow of information.
Okay. Now, if we can...
Do you think we ought to be having a break soon?
Yes, I do, and I'm very conscious of that. I was wondering whether I might be able to get to the end of this topic and then break, but if you'd rather break soon.
Well, we've been running an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I think probably this is a good moment.
Yes. Could we say 10 minutes? I'm just
Well,
conscious that we are
we
really
have to
going
be very careful about length of breaks, don't we? I think it would be unwise to try and shorten them too much.
Okay, 15 minutes then.
Mr. Stones, we're going to have a break now. We'll come back at 20 to 4, please. And no talking about your evidence or anything to do with it when you're out of the room. All right? Thank you very much. Twenty to 4 then, please. Okay. Yes, would you ask Mr. Sounes to come back, please? All right, Mr. Sounes, ready to go on?
Yes.
Good. Yes, Ms. Grange.
Yes, thank you. Just picking up again on the topic of the full plans application that went in on the 5th of August 2014, can we turn up a document SEA 30-11398? Now, this is an email, I think, at the bottom of the page from John Allen to RBK to you. Thank you for your summary of the costs. And the point I'm asked to put to you is that can you confirm that Mr. Allen, RBKC, had asked you to submit a set of drawings with the full plans application form?
Sorry, you're asking me if it's not mentioned there.
No, I can see it's not mentioned there. Is the second page to this email? No, can we go back to the first page? Yes, I think you get it actually from your response to Ryden. Do you see you then forward this on to Zach Maynard and Simon Lawrence of Ryden? In that last paragraph, you say he wants a set of drawings to accompany the submission, but it probably makes sense to hold on the drawings until we've got confirmation on the flats and ground floor changes. Do you see that?
Yes.
So can I just confirm that it was your understanding at the time that Building Control had wanted a full set of drawings to accompany the submission?
I think they would expect drawings, yes.
Yeah. Now, just before we get to the first big pack of drawings that were submitted, can we look at SEA 50189? And this is an email, if we just blow it up, from Simon Lawrence to John Hoban, copying you and others in. And this is where he is introducing himself, Mr. Lawrence, as the Ryden Contracts Manager. He says, we haven't been introduced properly yet, but I am Ryden's Contracts Manager for the Grenfell Tower project. And then he says, I understand that you dropped into our site office recently and had a brief introduction to the project and drawings from our project manager, Simon O'Connor. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And then in that final paragraph, he says, Studio E are our architects, lead designers, who will forward all relevant drawings, etc. in the future. I believe you already know them from your work on the Calc project next door, so hopefully this will make things easier. I'll ask them to arrange a meeting with yourself on site shortly. Do you see that?
Yes.
It's suggesting that in that first paragraph that John Hoban had popped into the site office and seen some drawings on site. Were you aware of that at the time?
Not before. I can't recall being aware of it before this email.
And he's saying in that very last sentence, I will ask them, that's you, Studio E, to arrange a meeting with yourself on site shortly with John Hoban.
Yes.
Did you have a meeting with him on site after this?
I didn't, personally.
Okay.
I wasn't fronting it at that point.
Now, sticking with the chronology, then so the full plans application goes in on the 5th of August 2014, and then that's the form. And then on the 24th of September 2014, Neil Crawford sends a pack of drawings to RBKC Building Control. Can we just look at that? This is RYD 30-18742. So this is, we can see from the top, Neil Crawford to John Hoban. Now, you're not copied into that. Had you had a discussion with Mr. Crawford about which drawings would be sent to Building Control?
It's too long ago to remember a specific conversation.
Okay. Were you aware that this first big pack of drawings that went still had the cladding panels labelled as zinc?
Again, I wasn't thinking of it at the time, so I wasn't aware of what was or wasn't on the drawing, although I would have expected Neil to submit the tender set at this stage.
The tender set?
Set of drawings, yes.
So that would have shown zinc, but events had moved on, hadn't it? I mean, by this stage, the ACM had very clearly been selected, hadn't it?
We didn't have planning as yet, approval for the... Sorry, I can't remember the exact date offhand now for the materials submission, but I don't think it was fully confirmed. And in a first submission, you would expect to follow up with more detail. So a general arrangement, even if it's not, sorry, a section or detailed section and elevation, even if not entirely accurate, would still be valid to show the scope.
I see. Did you know that these drawings did not include details of the insulation that was going to be used on the columns or behind the spandrels?
I wasn't sure what was submitted, and if it's not on the drawing in the form of an explicit note, which wasn't our custom was to use MBS codes. I guess I didn't know, no.
Okay. Had you known those things, that it was still labelled zinc and it didn't show what insulation was to be used, is that something you would have asked Mr. Crawford to correct before the drawings went in?
Not necessarily. I think typically individual items are considered in turn, and insulation was one of them. So just because it wasn't annotated on every drawing, it doesn't suggest there's something missing.
But in terms of, my question was also about the zinc. Wasn't it important to send building control accurate information so that they could do their job properly?
In the context of the first submission or in context of subsequent submissions? Because I can't disagree with that statement. But this first, as is usually the case, the first set of drawings is to provide specifically the fire strategy and an overview of the project.
I see. So you didn't think it was important to be providing all the up-to-date details in that first submission?
I don't think we were at the point of detailed design of the envelope at this point.
I'm not talking about detailed design, I'm talking about the selection of the materials to be used.
I think those would, in building control's mind, as in our mind, to some extent were deferred. So no, I don't think it was essential that your submission was 100% consistent with what you were going to build.
Okay. Now, in fact, we can see from the documents, so that pack of drawings goes on the 24th of September 2014, and on the 25th of September 2014, the very next day, the planners approved the smoke silver ACM panels. They'd previously been going towards the champagne colour, and then on the 25th of September, it was the smoke silver ACM panels that were approved. For the transcript, that's at IBI 401802. Now, that was clearly an important milestone in the project, wasn't it?
Yes.
The approval of those ACM panels. Did it occur to you at the time that Studio E would need to update building control of the change from zinc to ACM?
I repeat, I think each item is considered in turn, and they would need more detail than what was provided on our GA set, I believe, to confirm their agreement.
Okay. Did you ever tell building control that there had been a change from zinc to ACM?
I can't recall having conversations, no.
And by this stage, we know you'd received a copy of the BBA certificate. Do you agree that the BBA certificate should have been sent on to building control?
I repeat, the elements of the construction are usually considered in turn. So, for instance, whether it be a mechanical aspect, obviously the cladding, the windows, and each would be submitted with relevant details to building control to confirm agreement.
Yes, and I'm asking, was the BBA certificate ever submitted to building control? Because we can't see any record that that ever happened.
I'm not aware. Obviously, I was not.
And you never checked with any colleagues that that had been done?
No.
During his oral evidence, Mr. Crawford said that he understood from conversations with you that building control were aware of the facade design and the materials specified to be used within it before the full plans application was made in August 2014. He said that on day 11 at page 141. Now, is that right? Had you told Mr. Crawford that building control were aware of the facade design and the materials specified to be used within it before the full plans went in?
The only comment which I've just made is that I believe I would have explained the nature of the refurbishment, but I can't recall any instance where I discussed the materials.
Okay.
With building control.
Now, we know that following the submission of the full plans application, you handed over responsibility for liaising to Neil Crawford. Did you retain any oversight of what he was doing on building control issues?
No, not on an ongoing basis. No, I was monitoring, as in I was copied in, but I wasn't checking.
No. Okay. Did you personally ever meet with Mr. Hoban to discuss the cladding for the project with him?
No. I think I had the one meeting with John Hoban. I can't remember the date now, but it was well in advance of the application.
So you can't recall ever discussing the cladding with Mr. Hoban, you personally?
No.
Or approved document B, you didn't have any discussions with him about that?
I think it was a meeting with Matt Smith from Max Fordham, one of the early meetings. I believe I met with John Hoban, but
I see.
I do not recall the contents of, apart from what's noted in minutes and in emails. I can't remember.
Okay.
Specific.
Now, Mr. Crawford said in his oral evidence that he had workshops on site with building control to discuss the cavity barrier strategy. He said there'd been one of these workshops before Christmas in 2014 and one in mid-February 2015, and he thought another one in late March, April 2015. That was at day 11, page 14, line 2 and following. Did you attend any such workshops with building control?
No.
Do you recall Mr. Crawford attending them? Were you aware that he was attending workshops with building control in those times?
I can't be precise. I knew he was visiting site, but I can't be precise.
Can you help us as to why there might be no written record of any such workshops with building control having taken place on those occasions?
No.
Now, just before I finish this topic, I want to turn to one specific issue about the rating of the cavity barriers. We've already been through some questions about Harley's query in March 2015 about the cavity barriers, whether they should be 120 minutes or 30 minutes. Now, on the 6th of March, you were CC'd into some further emails from Neil Crawford where he was trying to find out the answer to Harley's queries. And I want to look at an email you sent. So this is SEA 30122915. Yes, if we can look at that email at the top of the page. This is you in March 2015 to Neil Crawford and Simon Lawrence. And you're saying there that you went to EcoBuild yesterday and stopped at the stand of Phil Metalbau and you say they had a large picture of Great Arthur House on their wall. And then in the second paragraph, you say also quite prominent on the wall was a UK Resi Tower over Cladding project. He explained that Mullally had screwed up and Kia, I think it was, had called Phil Metalbow in to replace every panel and make good on a time charge basis. And then he said Franz made several disparaging comments about Mullally workmanship. And you see there, and the last bullet point you've got there is no fire stops. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you say, I'm sure Paul Hansen is going to be very particular about fire stops at Grenfell Tower. Do you see that?
Yes.
What did you mean when you said this about Paul Hansen being particular about fire stops? Wasn't it John Hoban who was leading on the cladding?
No. Most of the meaningful engagement I'd had up to that point was with Paul Hansen.
I see.
I thought he led that department. That was my impression.
Right. Was this email intended by you as a strong prod to Neil Crawford and Simon Lawrence to get it right in terms of the fire stopping within the overcladding? What was the purpose for you sending this email?
I actually think it may have something to do with the Great Arthur House. And that's where I think it might have started. I think Ryden had bid for that project with Harley. And I think I had learnt that by then. And of course I was just relating some of the information from and of course, Mullally were one of the tenderers on the contract, on the Grenfell Tower. And that was really the extent of the interest of the email.
In the light of that email, did you ever check what information had been provided to RBKC Building Control about cavity barriers at this point?
No.
Okay. So I want to move on to some different topics. Just very quickly, the Building Control Alliance, did you know that at the time of the Grenfell project, the Building Control Alliance, the BCA, had issued guidance documents for the construction industry? Did you know that? No. And did you ever read a BCA guidance document entitled Technical Guidance Note 18, Use of Combustible Cladding Materials on Residential Buildings? It was dated June 2014.
No.
No, okay. Handover to Mr. Crawford, this is my next topic. You've said that from July 2014, Neil Crawford began to take on the role of the Studio E day-to-day contact on the project. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes.
Why was it that you became less involved in the project?
I obviously moved on to other things. I'm sorry, I can't give you more detail. I haven't tried to. I didn't focus on that.
Did it reflect a decision made within Studio E to allocate more junior resources to the project and divert more senior resources to other work?
No. Neil had, to a large extent, performed my role on Grenfell from the beginning on the Calc project. So he had, with Andre, fronted the Academy project, and he had seen it through to completion. I wouldn't regard Neil as junior, so I don't agree with your statement.
Okay. Now, Mr. Crawford has told us in paragraph 25.1 of his statement that according to his Outlook calendar, on the 13th of August 2014, you and him had a handover discussion meeting regarding the project. Do you recall that meeting?
Possibly, but not most conversations. I can't recall.
Do you recall planning what you were going to say to Mr. Crawford at that handover meeting about what remained to be done on the project?
No, I mean, there would have been a point at which we sat down, but here I'm trying to reconstruct it.
Okay.
There would have been a point.
Do you recall anything about the content of that handover meeting?
No.
No. Do you think you might have told Mr. Crawford that there was relatively little left to do on the project?
I don't think that was my impression at the time.
Was there a standard procedure within Studio E for how these handovers happened, or was it done on an informal basis?
I would say it was informal because it took place over a period and there was no sudden handover. I didn't disappear. I was always available.
So does it follow that you can't really tell us anything now about what was included as part of that handover and what you discussed?
No, I can't remember anything in detail.
Just one specific point. Did you instruct Mr. Crawford that Exover would need to update their outline fire strategy analysis? Do you remember having that conversation with him?
No, I don't believe I did.
You don't believe you did have that?
No.
Did you ever tell Mr. Crawford what the bespoke terms were which Ryden had proposed in 2014? Do you remember discussing the terms of the Ryden appointment with Mr. Crawford?
I might have done, but I can't remember.
So you don't recall going through the terms and checking that Mr. Crawford had understood what he was to do in the schedule of services that was attached to that?
No, I don't think I did.
Okay. Can we go to an email? This is SEA 30133741. This is an email to you from Daniel Banks on the 14th of December 2015. And he says to you, thanks for your email. I'm conscious we have outstanding appointments and warranties for the following jobs. And he's got Lea Bridge Road, Frognall Place, Grenfell Towers. And he says you previously commented on the form and warranty of the deed of appointment. Those other projects that are being mentioned there for Ryden, Lea Bridge and Frognall Place projects, can you remember how big those projects were?
Lea Bridge was quite a substantial project, but I won't hazard a guess as to the value, but it was in Walthamstow, a police station that was being converted into a hostel with two new build blocks next either side. Frognall Place, it was change of use and mostly internal alterations to a series of units.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't hazard a value of that.
If it helps, these other projects on Ryden's websites were said to be £7 million and £6.1 million projects, respectively. So they're not small projects, are they?
But I didn't realise Frognall was that scale.
What I want to ask you is, did Studio E's work on these other projects affect the extent to which it was able to devote resources to the Grenfell project?
There were different people involved, completely.
Was that the reason why Mr. Crawford appears to have been effectively the sole Studio E professional engaged on the project from July 2014 onwards? I
don't connect the Lea Bridge and Frognall Place projects with Grenfell. Had Neil required resource, he would have got it to assist.
Okay, so you don't think that resourcing within Studio E affected the extent to which you were able to service the Grenfell project after July 2014?
Not at all.
Okay. Quality assurance and document control. ISO 9001. Are you familiar with ISO 9001 on quality management systems?
I'm not very familiar with it, but I know of it.
I see. Do you know if during your involvement on the project a quality management system was in place in accordance with ISO 9001 within Studio E?
We had a system which was audited, which I think includes what you referred to.
Okay, I want to ask you some questions about documentary control processes and output. Do you agree that a quality assurance system compliant with the standards of ISO 9001 would demand a structured, accessible and well-maintained document control system?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the RIBA Handbook of Practice Management, 9th edition? Can we have a look at that? This is at INQ 30111309. And I want to look on page 135 at paragraph 11.2.3 under the heading Project-Related Risks. And in that second paragraph, this is what I wanted to draw your attention to. It says particular attention should be paid to establishing a good document storage and retrieval system which will make documents easy to find should suggestions of breach of duty be made, and that a clear record is maintained showing exactly what was issued to whom and when. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Would you agree that that was important?
Yes.
And were you aware of that at the time you were working on the Grenfell project?
I can't say I was aware of that paragraph, but the principle is certainly one I was aware of.
I think we touched on it earlier. Do you agree that through the life of an architectural project, all documentation issued to clients, consultants and statutory authorities should be recorded on a drawing issue register?
That's the convention. I wouldn't say it's a requirement, but that's a convention which goes back a long way to recording issues.
And do you agree that it should contain the names of recipients of those drawings and the dates that they were sent?
That's usually what's contained on a drawing issue sheet, yes.
Yeah. Can we then look at the document SEA 30135512, and I need the offline version. It's a document entitled Document Register and Issue Advice. Now, if we look on the right-hand side, at the top, we can see this is a Studio E document, and it has a number of dates on the top right-hand side. And we can see the register runs from the 12th of September 2013 through to the 29th of October 2014. And actually, it goes, if we go to page 4, it goes beyond that to the 6th of July 2015. Yes, if we can see that at the top. So it's running through to 2015. Now, if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see the distribution list on page 2. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And it appears from the face of this document that there is no record of any information issue being made to either Exova or RBKC Building Control. They are outlined here on this distribution list. Do you see that?
Yes.
So it doesn't seem to record that at any time throughout that period, September 13 to July 2015, what information was issued to Building Control or Exova. Now, is it right that the document register and issue advice, this should have recorded key milestones in terms of the issue of documents?
Yes.
And do you agree that it should have recorded those drawings issued to Exova and to Building Control? For example, that the pack of drawings that was sent on the 24th of September 2014 following the full plans application,
Yes.
Would you agree that the failure to record what drawings were issued to building control and Exover is a serious omission on Studio E's part?
It would be an omission if there was no record. But I believe there are records.
I see.
So it is not good practice to not maintain a drawing issue sheet. But there is a record.
Do you mean there's records because we can look back at emails
Yes.
and piecemeal?
Yes.
I see. But you're accepting that it wasn't good practice because good practice would have meant including it in this kind of register?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair, thanks. And so do you agree that it's not possible to determine by looking at this register whether building control or Exover might have been missing any particularly key documents?
Yes.
Now, quality assurance and technical reviews. I want to ask you some questions about Studio E's system of internal reviews. And if we look at your witness statement, this is SEA 30-14273 at page 62, and I want to look at paragraph 130. So you say here, I should also note that Studio E has an internal technical review process which involves a design review and a technical review by Studio E employees not otherwise involved in the project. Internal reviews are part of our ISO 9001 quality assurance process. They're conducted at key stages in the project and are intended to be a peer review of the work in progress, to share thoughts and cross-check that all relevant issues are being considered. I carried out a technical review for the project after Neil became involved. This is discussed further below. Do you see that there?
Yes.
So you're talking about both design reviews and technical reviews. And is it correct that a technical review will focus on technical considerations such as the choice and arrangement of materials and components to achieve the performance objectives, such as thermal insulation, weather protection and fire safety?
The design review would normally...
I'm talking about the technical review, sorry.
The technical review would obviously occur when the project is ideally approaching site. So yes, it would include an overview of any technical aspect.
And do you agree that such reviews would seek to ensure that the construction documentation, i.e. the drawings, schedules, specification, are in all respects functional and fit for purpose and fully compliant with the relevant standards and statutory requirements?
That's a massive ask. I don't believe our QA was quite so extensive.
Okay. Do you agree that technical reviews might be informal, taking place at short notice to discuss a particular aspect of the work?
They wouldn't necessarily be a short notice or even of short duration. They may focus on specific issues which one or other party thinks is more relevant than others.
I see. Do you agree that they could also be formal, scheduled events which are documented?
They were meant to be documented, yeah.
Yeah. Is it fair to say that without any formal technical review process, there's no way of monitoring the quality of the work that's produced?
That's a bit blanket. I think everything any architect's office produces is monitored day by day. The technical review or the QA is a way of making sure that something hasn't been missed and that everything has been done as expected.
I see. Now, if we look at paragraph 131 of your witness statement, 3 lines down from the beginning, you say there, based on our quality management system, I believe that our internal design and technical reviews for the project took place in February 2013 and October 2015, respectively. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And then you say, however, there was likely to have been some discussion of the project at the calc design and technical reviews held in September 2012. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So is it right that there was only one technical review on the Grenfell Tower project, and that was in October 2015?
Yes.
And you discussed the October 2015 review at paragraph 470.6 of your statement. This is at page 182. If we can just look at that. And you say, on the 28th of October 2015, I took part in an internal technical review of Studio E's work on the project. Neil Crawford, Studio E, issued the internal report the next day using the Office template document, which we would have both used as a checklist to discuss and agree whether there were any areas that needed to be investigated further. I note it contained a comment regarding design standards and that it was designed to current housing, approved document building regulations and British standards. Do you see that there?
Yes.
What I want to do is just look at the contemporaneous record of that review. That's at SEA 30-13508. Now, if we look at the top of the document, you are there recorded as the assessor in the middle of the page, and Mr. Crawford is recorded as the project architect. Can you explain why no one more senior at Studio E was involved in that technical review?
The only ones more senior were Andre or David Lloyd-Jones, but I think that was agreed. That's an acceptable level of seniority.
You think that's an acceptable level of seniority to be doing the technical review? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yes.
Was it common at Studio E for no more senior person to conduct them, for example, a partner or director?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. Now, as at October 2015, we know from other documents that the work to the external facade was 60% complete, approximately. So this first technical review appears to be undertaken when the construction of the external facade was 60% complete. Does that sound about right?
I can't dispute that.
Now, Mr. Cushel said in his witness statement, at paragraph 24.2, that a technical review usually occurs at RIBA stages E, F. Would you agree with Mr. Cushel that that's normally the stage where a technical review would be carried out?
Yes.
So that would have been in late 2013, early 2014, before Studio E was appointed by Ryden, is that correct?
Yes.
Would you agree that if the technical review meeting, and I think we've agreed it, was the first such review, the meeting on the 28th of October 2015, then it's been carried out far too late in the project?
It is late, yes.
Were you aware of that at the time you were doing it?
Yes.
Now, if we go back to this technical review and look at page 2 under the heading Project Documents, it states in relation to building regulations assessment, page 2. You can see there, under Building Regulations Assessment, it says building control sign-off drawings have been issued and incrementally signed off, agreed on site. Do you see that?
Yes.
Would you agree that that's in fact incorrect and that there had not been any sign-off of drawings by building control by this stage, had there?
I don't think that building controls issue anything until the final certificate. So you may be justified in thinking you have had something signed off without the document.
So what do you mean there by building control sign-off drawings have been issued and incrementally signed off, agreed on site? What does that mean?
I think sign-off drawings is the hyphen is confusing. I read that as the drawings that have been submitted to building control incrementally and have been signed off stroke agreed on site. Does that clarify it?
Not entirely. What I want to put to you is that that's a misleading summary of the statutory approval process, that building control hadn't been signing off drawings agreed on site.
To the extent that you wouldn't get a signature for a drawing from building control, I agree it's true, but I think it is accurate to say that it is an incremental procedure and it was ongoing at this stage.
Okay. So are you really saying there was some kind of implicit sign-off by building control? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yes.
Now, at the bottom of the page, we've got design standards, and there's a comment there. It says, design to current housing, approved document building regulations, and British standards where applicable. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Now, you've said approved document building regulations. Did you mean it's been designed in accordance with the approved documents and also it meets the building regulations?
That would be my understanding, yes.
Now, but I think you told us earlier today that in terms of compliance with Part B, it hadn't been designed in accordance with approved document B for fire.
No, I thought it had. I think that's accurate. We believed that we were designing in accordance with approved document B.
But you certainly told us in the context of the cavity barriers today that you found the guidance confusing and that you hadn't used it for that aspect of the works.
No, I disagree. I don't think the approved document can be used so literally. That was my point.
Okay, well, again, I'm going to suggest that in the light of what you've told us today, that it's not correct to have recorded there that the design standard included the approved document if, in fact, you knew that for certain aspects of the work, you hadn't followed that practical guidance.
No, I'll repeat that there is no specific guidance in the approved document dealing with a rain screen overclad or rain screen cladding. It requires some degree of interpretation.
Right. Now, as matters stood, the latest advice you'd had from Exover was in issue 3 of the outline fire safety strategy, wasn't it?
By this stage, we had obviously subsequent emails, but formally, yes.
But did you look back and think about the fact that on B4, Exover's work was still incomplete because there was due to be an analysis in a future issue of their report?
No, because Exover had been asked to prepare a strategy document.
So on what basis did you think in this technical review that in terms of fire there'd been compliance with the building regulations and the approved document?
Well, you're asking me again, how can we believe that it's compliant if we haven't determined it ourselves? And I repeat that I did not believe was our role.
I see. So what are you actually doing in this technical review? What's the process by which you're commenting there?
It's a summary of the design standards that we believe were applicable.
Okay. Turning to page 3, under the heading Technical Performance, there's a section Fire Detailing. And it says there, Fire Detailing comment completed. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Do you know what that comment relates to?
I can only point to the column, the left-hand box which says fire detailing, and that would cover internal and external fire sealing and cavity barriers.
Now, by this time, the detailing of the cavity barriers was not complete, was it? We've seen that there were...
October 15, I think we believed it was.
I see. Okay. What about any more informal technical reviews? Were you aware of any such informal technical reviews occurring?
No, I can't remember anything offhand.
Just in terms of what documents you had to hand when you were working, I think there was mention in Mr. Crawford's evidence to the fact you worked on a paperless basis. You worked predominantly electronically. Is that correct?
I think I don't think anyone's paperless, but I tried to ensure that there was always a digital record.
Yeah. Would you ever have had any hard copy documents to hand, like really key documents on the project? For example, the outline fire safety strategies by Exova or the NVS specification. Would you ever have those in hard copy?
Yes. Usually I would keep hard copies of documents that I might need with me at meetings. That's usually...
Now, Mr. Chairman, I've got two very short comments, topics, very short topics.
Yes.
Before I finish my questions, perhaps I could be permitted to finish those.
All right, then we'll see where we've got to.
And then see where we are. In Mr. Cushell's evidence that he gave on the 2nd of March, he told the inquiry that a company called Kroner had carried out a review of Studio E's health and safety procedures in 2013. Do you recall that review ever having taken place?
I have to say, yes, I recall conversations surrounding Kroner. I was not familiar with what they did in detail.
So you don't know what that review covered?
Not in detail, no.
Can we look at an email? This is SEA 405947 at page 2. SEA 405947 at page 2. No, it was a no, page 2. I'll come back to that email in a moment. It's an email in which, I don't know if you recall it, you contact Kroner as the point of call for CDM-related issues.
Yes.
And ask for some input on the issue. And then Kroner come back to you and basically say they can't give CDM-specific advice for projects. That's not what they do. And then you appeared to be rather annoyed about that. Do you recall that exchange?
Yes.
And is it right that you felt that Kroner had failed to perform for Studio E at the time in terms of not giving advice on CDM-related issues?
No, I don't think my annoyance was with Kroner.
Who were you annoyed with?
I understood that we were... we had appointed somebody to provide CDM advice. And that was, it was an obligation on us to do that. And on the Grenfell Tower, we knew we had an issue with opening windows. And I wanted to get some input on that specific issue of safety and opening windows.
Right,
in a residential context. and they weren't prepared to give it.
In terms of the CDM regulations, do you accept that as a designer, Studio E was responsible for design and complying with the CDM regulations 2007
Yeah.
and liaising with the appointed CDM coordinator
Yes.
on the project? And do you accept that Studio E as designer was responsible for ensuring that a design risk assessment was compiled and reviewed, revised, updated as and when appropriate?
Yes.
Now, we can see that Studio E did a design risk assessment. Can we look at that? This is at TMO 1303944. It's dated the 23rd of October 2013. And if we look at the first entry at the top, fire risk during works, do you see that there?
Yes.
Do you agree that there's very little detail there about the fire risk during the work?
In terms of us identifying the potential risks?
Yeah.
There's not much detail, I agree, yes.
And if we look at page 3, section for fire, 15C, D, and 16A, there's a reference there, firefighting strategy review. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Do you know what that was referring to?
I can only assume that's, well, I can't assume, but I think that would be referring to the fire appliance access to the tower.
Do you know whether this risk assessment schedule was ever updated during the project?
I can't recall, no.
Did you ever think to update it when the cladding changed from zinc to ACM or when the insulation changed from FR5000 to RS5000?
No. I don't think there are any products mentioned in the risk assessment.
Did anyone ever ask you to update it?
No.
Just going back to those Kroner emails, if we go, this is SEA 405449. It's the second email down. So you've emailed him, Martin Summerfield of Kroner, saying, I understand you're our point of call for CDM-related issues. I hope you're able to give us some input on this one. And then if we can go up the email to the next one up. He says, hello, Bruce, I'm actually on holiday at the moment. For some reason, my auto reply is not working. I did point out to Catherine that I cannot give specific CDM advice for projects. That's not what we do. Do you see that there?
Yes.
You should refer any design issues to the CDM coordinator for the project and the principal contractor. And then, sorry, I think we're still missing. There's an email at the top of the page then where you expressed some annoyance at that response. Can you recall that?
Yes, yes. I think I've outlined it. I just outlined it. I thought that was the sort of advice that we were getting from Kroner. That wasn't my irritation wasn't directed at Kroner.
It was directed at who?
Studio E.
I see, because you were frustrated that they hadn't engaged Kroner to give you that kind of advice.
No, I thought that's what we were getting, but it appeared we hadn't got specific CDM advice. Maybe I'd been misled as to what Kroner were going to offer.
I see. Mr. Sounes, the last question I want to ask you is, we've been now through an awful lot of the contemporaneous material from the project over a number of days. In the light of all that, I want to ask you and give you the opportunity to say whether you would have done anything differently if you'd had the chance to do it again.
I've had a long time to think about this. I think it's a very cruel question. I said I sat through and I watched all of the fire experts' evidence. And then in fact, quite a bit later, I studied the DCLG tests. And in a sense, that was more revealing. But I had no idea.
Yeah.
And I don't believe anyone involved
Yeah.
in the project would have not acted had they known.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my questions.
Yes.
Actually, sorry, I'm terribly sorry. Sorry, there was one more question that I'd said I would ask. Sorry, can I just finish that? One more question. I mean, maybe we should discuss this now. We're going to have a break, as is customary.
Just to see where we're going now. Mr. Sounes, I think you probably understand, because you've been following our work from time to time, that when a witness gets to the end of his evidence, we have to have a break of a reasonable length to allow people who are following the inquiry from other places to put questions for consideration by our own counsel. Now, in the situation we're in now, that would have to be about 15 minutes. And then we often find that another series of questions should be asked, and that could take another 15 minutes. Now, I sense you've had a long day already. And one of the options that we must consider is whether it would be wise to stop now, but ask you to come back tomorrow morning just to field any additional questions that might have cropped up over the interim. Now, you could do that. It shouldn't take very long. It would obviously be inconvenient for you to come back again tomorrow morning. On the other hand, you might feel slightly more robust having had a break overnight. So I had already told Miss Grange that I thought we should finish at 4:45 at the latest, because I was concerned about you're becoming rather tired to deal with other questions.
Mr. Chairman,
tell me how it strikes you. And would you be content to come back tomorrow morning?
I'd very much like to finish.
I'm sure you would, but just bear in mind that this could go on a bit.
Mr. Chairman, I understand there may be some operational issues that we need to consider about whether it's feasible to have Mr. Sounes back tomorrow, and also cover what was next in the programme. Could we perhaps just have a very short break now to just consider what the best
all right, but I
plan
want
of
to make
action
it clear,
is?
I'm concerned about Mr. Sounes' position.
Yeah, I understand that.
He's had a long day giving evidence, and it takes its toll on anyone in his position. When you say a short break, do you mean 5 minutes?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Sounes, you've been following what we've been saying. We're going to have a short break now to consider the implications of where we go, and you can do the same while you're out of the room. And then when you come back, you can tell me how you see things, and then we'll decide what we do. All right? Okay. 4:45 then, please. Right, 4:45.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, would you ask Mr. Sounes to come back in, please? Now, Mr. Sounes, first of all, my apologies. The 5 minutes turned into 10, as it so often does, but there we are. I'm going to ask Miss Grange if she's got any idea how many more questions there might be, and then we'll take it from there. Miss Grange, you've got one question.
Just one question.
Is that all you've got on the plate at the moment?
That's correct.
Right. Now, as I explained to you earlier, the normal course now would be to break for about 10 minutes.
Right.
To give other people the chance to feed questions into Miss Grange. And then, depending on what comes in, we might be here for another 10 or 15 minutes dealing with them. I've no idea at the moment whether there'll be many or few. Now, as I said to you earlier, it's been a long day, and I'm sure you are tired. I'm also sure you want to finish your evidence if you can, but I don't think it's fair to you to push you along unless you feel up to doing it. Do you understand that?
I do.
All right. Now, how do you feel about it?
I'm very happy to continue. I'm very happy. I would like to continue rather than...
Even though you might be here for another 20 minutes or thereabouts?
Yes.
All right. Now, Ms. Grange, do you want to put your last question for your examination?
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah.
And then we'll break.
That would be helpful.
Miss Grange has got one final question. Oh, I'm sorry, before we go on, I should have asked the shorthand writer if she's happy to go on. Yeah, all right.
I'm grateful. Thank you. It's about there being a firefighter lift. It's a very discreet question. If we can go to a document, this is EXO 401592. And I want to start by looking at page 3 of this. So at the top of that page, we see an email from Kate Cooney to you on the 9th of August 2012. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And she's asking you a number of questions. And in the third question, she says, is there a firefighting lift? Do you see that there?
Yes.
And then if we can go up the page on the 10th of August 2012, page 2 of this. We can see there, sorry, we should perhaps just see the top of the email first. Yes, it's a response back to her on the 10th of August 2012. And if we can go down the page again, you can see there you put firefighting lift no. Do you see that there?
Yes.
And it's really just to find out from you, can you recall why you told Kate Cooney that there was no firefighting lift in the tower? Can you recall on what basis you came upon that information and then gave it to her?
I understood a firefighting lift was a firefighting shaft with its own lobby and stair.
Yeah.
So this was not it.
Yeah. So you'd worked that out yourself from looking at the design drawings of the tower?
Yes, although I believe it was referred to as a firefighting lift, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's not a firefighting shaft, and maybe I confused the two.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, that was all I wanted to ask about that.
Well, thank you very much. Well, now we'll take the break now then, Mr. Sounes, and if you're confident that you are okay to carry on. Little time has passed. I'm going to say 5:05, and then we'll put it all to bed then. All right? Thank you very much. Right, 5:05 then, please.
Thank you.
Yes, would you ask Mr. Sounes to come back, please? Right, Mr. Sounes, this is the last lap.
Yes.
No, that's great. Have you got some more questions?
Yes, just a few, but just very few. Mr. Sounes, can we just look in the context of building control at a document SEA 50154? And I think this is an email that you sent to Paul Hanson of Building Control on the 3rd of December 2013. And it's about the smoke control system.
Yes.
And you state in this email that system is the single biggest risk to the proposals at that stage.
This email?
That's the reference I've been given. I'm sorry, I'm having to respond to questions that are coming in at the very last minute. In an email to Paul Hanson, you state that the smoke ventilation system is the single biggest risk to the proposals. And this is the reference I've been given. Is there any more? Can we just look? Is there any more emails further down from? Yes,
Yeah,
there we go. Thank you. So it's on page 2. And in that second paragraph, we can see you say there, we believe that agreement on the smoke ventilation to the tower is the single biggest risk to the proposals.
Yes.
But we don't think it's reasonable to leave the existing system in place. Do you see that there?
Yes.
Can you just explain to us why you thought that that was the single biggest risk to the proposals? Do you mean the building control proposals?
No, it's the proposals that involve the dramatic alterations to the lower floors, creating new accommodation.
Right.
That, I would say, if that was going to be assessed afresh against current guidance, that presented a potential risk to the overall scope of the work.
I see. So was cladding in your mind when you made that statement there?
No.
No. And is it right that in the end your understanding was that advice was sought from building control on the proposed system, the proposed smoke control system?
Yes, I believe that
Yeah.
went on for some time.
And then if I can look at another related email, this is EXO 502140. Is that, try 4 zeros. I think this might have been a typo in the document I've been sent. 4 zeros, EXO 4 zeros 2140. Is that working? There's an email to Max Fordham and Exover in which you state, I think we need to formulate our argument for the smoke vent as soon as possible in relation to building control comments. Do you recall saying that?
Possibly, yes.
Do you recall what you were trying to argue in relation to the smoke control system?
I believe I was following up the first meeting with Paul Hanson, where he had asked for justification.
Right, yes,
for the works to the smoke system to keep it. His argument, as I recall, was you can't make anything worse, the non-worsening principle.
Yeah.
And he wanted something in writing or some kind of argument to demonstrate how what was there would be improved.
Yeah, and was no worse.
It was no worse. And I think I was chasing Duncan, and I think Duncan particularly rather than Terry for this input.
Yeah. I've been asked to ask you about the use of the term there, argument, and to put to you that shouldn't you have been taking their advice rather than formulating arguments? It seems like quite a kind of adversarial process, put like that.
No, again, I think that's taken out of context. What he was asking for was this analysis of what was there or what was designed, and then provide a comparison.
Yeah.
To compare it, so to show. I think we expected an improvement. That I had used the word argument to describe that comparison.
Okay. Yeah. And then my final topic is about leaseholder consultation. Do you remember we had a look at that in the context of that engagement document?
Yes.
Did you appreciate at the time that there are additional legal duties pursuant to the Landlord and Tenant Act 1985 to consult with leaseholders on major works project? Was that something you were aware of at the time?
Not the detail of any statutory requirements, but it makes sense.
Yeah. Did anyone at TMO or RBKC ever make this clear to Studio E? Did you have that discussion with them?
No.
Did you think it was the responsibility of Studio E to be engaging with leaseholders?
No.
No. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, those are all of the questions.
Yes? Well, thank you very much. Well, Mr. Sounes, those are all the questions. I must thank you very much for coming to give your evidence. I know it's been extended over rather a long time, and I'm sorry for that. And I'm sorry that we've kept you very late today, but at least we have finished. We're grateful to you for coming to help us. So thank you very much. You're now free to go.
Thank you.
All right. Good, and that's it for the day.
It is.
10 o'clock tomorrow.
Yes, Mr. Millett will be dealing with Mr. Simon Lawrence tomorrow,
Right.
first of the Ryden witnesses.
Yes, thank you very much. Good. 10 o'clock tomorrow, please.
Thank you.
Yep.